topic, integration between ecological and genealogical patterns. Where are we? The question is very ambitious, and in fact, it's a very difficult question. First of all, because it's very general. And to answer it, you have to be general and to have to ignore, not to focus on subfields that are very present in both the two fields, ecology and evolution. And you have to overlook that there are many scientific contexts, like, for example, theory. Are we talking about integration in theory? Are we talking about integration in field work? And we're talking about integration in how the theories are taught to biologists? Are we talking about simulations? There are many ways we can go, and there are different timescales, and there are different ways we can interpret the word integration. And I'm really I just give some thought on this, and the risk is also to be anecdotal, because, for example, one of these days I looked at some textbooks that are studying here in Lisbon. For example, the ecology textbook has a very good section on evolutionary biology, and is this a sign of integration? Or evolution students have just one class of ecology. Is this a sign of bad integration? It's difficult question. First of all, we have to clarify what I mean for ecological patterns are the ones that can be captured by following physical and chemical flows and cycles. This is what my meaning of ecology. The genealogical patterns are those that can be followed and fully captured by following bloodlines, related lineages, and the common ancestry. So, are these two integrated? Preliminary, I won't take much time. I just give my answer now. First of all, I don't know if they are integrated. Second, I think my impression is that ecology is a little bit ahead of evolutionary biology in the search of an integration. They always have been ahead historically in this. And second, that ecologists are very charitable versus evolutionary biologists, because they have a good impression of the disposition of evolutionists to take care of ecological dynamics, but I think they are too optimistic somehow. I think that evolution is integrated in ecology very well, better at the macro scale, but very poorly at the micro scale, despite many claims. And finally, I think that ecology for this push to integration is managing better to integrate the genealogical patterns. So I made a small timeline just to say that, for example, at Darwin's time, the ecology and evolution were largely integrated, were the same thing in biology. And the term ecology was coined by Haeckel, as you all know, with explicit reference to Darwin, to the struggle of existence, but also defined as the economy of nature. So we already had this idea of the relations of the animal to its inorganic and organic environment, including friendly and inimical relations. So everything that is connected in a system. And indeed, I think ecology has always been a systemic way of thinking, well before the systems thinking were introduced in the 20th century. So there was, Darwin didn't invent this idea of the economy of nature. He took from before, from Lyell, from Linnaeus. So ecology has a strong history, actually. But then there was like divorce somehow in the end of the 19th century. With Warming, Schimper, and Rood, and a lot of proto-ecologists, they had the feeling that they could develop very well a theory of ecology with this systemic look, with the interactions and of the system as a whole, without making particular reference to evolution. And discovering very important things, for example, how can you measure the influence of a biota on the physical environment and vice versa. So, but there were people like Lotka in 1922 still had this idea of evolution as a theory that is a part of thermodynamics in somehow. So of the circulation of matter and energy of the organization of matter. And I like this. This paper is very good and very famous. And Lotka here says that the fundamental object of contention in the life struggle, that is in evolution, is available energy. So basically, evolution is the effect of natural selection that competes in species that compete with each other on the who is most efficient in guiding available energy. You see this physico-chemical glance, I think. But then the modern synthesis, the famous modern synthesis, I think that this was a way of abandoning that, physico-chemical view of evolution, and by focusing on fluxes of traits, of alleles, and subsuming the ecological dynamics in the selective pressures. So the environment becomes external to the evolving organisms, and it becomes very much, simplified and condensed in these values that we have, the selective pressures on populations. And we don't need to get to the selfish gene and the 70s on the idea that genes evolved in a vacuum, because it's just, population genetics constructed this way of viewing evolution, which is very difficult to integrate with the former the former view of evolution, the thermodynamic one. So, and ecology at the same time became a specialized discipline. For example, in 1935, we have the invention of the concept of ecosystem, which is very interesting, there were many terms that were competing for this idea. There were biome, and Tensley thought that the biome is okay, is an okay term, but it doesn't express sufficiently the interaction between the biological beings and the physical environment. So the organisms are what are our primary interest, but they cannot be separated by the special environment with which they form one physical system. And the basic units of nature are these systems that Tensley decided to call, so to speak, ecosystems. And now we have the ecology, which is, and since 1953, with Odum and all these important textbooks, ecology became an interdisciplinary science. But basically science of ecosystems. And it also proliferated in different branches like functional ecology, community ecology, and ecosystem science. All of this with, reference to evolutionary thinking, but in a very autonomous way. So, and then in the 60s, in the 50s, there were already a lot of ecologists that were very worried of forgetting evolution. And Orians, in this famous paper in '62, described this idea that some ecologists were happy to do without evolution, and he called these ecologists functional ecologists. And with the slogan, the job of ecologists, for these functional ecologists, is to count auger holes, so to predict the number of bees to be found. And the job of the evolutionist is to measure genetic change as a result of competition. So we can do without evolutionists, because our job is another thing. And then we had evolutionary ecologists, which was an invention of Orians. And the concept is that evolutionary mechanisms provide the key to understanding adaptation, and so ecology cannot do without evolution. And the better citations I found is that it is becoming increasingly apparent that a complete answer to any question should deal with physiological, adaptational, and revolutionary aspects of the problem. And the non-evolutionary answer to the question of why an animal is abundant in some parts of its range and rare is another is on necessity incomplete. That is, we need evolution to give meaningful answers. And we also need integration at a theoretical level. So there must be a theory of biology that has ecological and evolutionary aspects in it. And then there was evolutionary ecology went on. Sorry, I don't know how to point this. Anyway, we are in the 80s. There were, for example, the journal Evolutionary Ecology, and yeah, a lot of developments of ecology that I don't have time to show. Now. About the evolution, I always make reference to this guy, Niles Eldredge, because I think that he is one of the famous co-authors of the punctuated equilibria theory. But I think that he was the one of the two that went in an ecological direction to explain the punctuations and the stasis. And the idea is that if you have many lineages that have coordinated equilibria and coordinated stasis, you have to look for ecological causes of all this. It cannot be an internal guidance. You have to take into account the macroecology. And he was followed by people like Verba and a lot of other people. And now, as you have seen one of these days in Michael Benton's talk, of course, this is a common knowledge that the macroevolutionary patterns of the environment and of the biological organisms are coupled. They go together. For example, when he was showing the diversity of life and the quantity of rocks plotted on the same graph. So we also have, of course, the importance of putting phylogenies aside with geological and climatic dynamics. For example, in hominin evolution. So the importance of where did they live and what environment was there and what were the biogeography the areas in that time. So, and he also in 1985 he started to develop this framework, the dual hierarchy, that I already presented yesterday, I think, with organisms that seem to be both energy conversions, machines, that is ecological agents, and reproducing packages of genetic information, that is genealogical agents. And such, they are integrated into two largely separate but interacting kinds of general system, the genealogical hierarchy and the ecological hierarchy. And so I don't have time to go into the detail of this, but it's very important. For example, for Eldredge, from 2003, he started to talk about this idea of the sloshing bucket. That is simply the idea that nothing interesting happens in evolution if there's no change in ecology, and that there is symmetry between the ecological disruption and genealogical innovation. So basically, this is the idea, and he also proposed this framework to go downwards to the smallest level, and also to reformulate the concept of natural selection, for example, as an interaction between ecological entities that have genealogical effects. And so, but evolutionary biology never accepted this way of formulating things. I think so. This is not very, very diffuse. And for example, sorry, how am I doing with time? And
5 minutes.
Over 5 minutes? All right. Thank you. Without these volunteers, we wouldn't have had any conference. Sorry. For example, the niche construction perspective, which was very hailed as a big innovation of evolutionary theory. I think that is not innovation that much, because if you look at the research of the models that have been built, they are just very classical population genetics models. And what they do is to add a feedback of the selection that happens on a locus on another locus. And they study very interesting dynamics in this locus. But if you read the papers, you have big claims about organisms being active in their environment and changing and having impact and interaction and coevolution. And you think, wow, we are really restructuring evolutionary theory. And then you look at the model, and there is two locus model where they say that one locus is in an organism and another locus is in another. So I think we are really behind the integration, despite all the bigs of philosophy of biology that are pushing this. Well, ecologists have their problem because for example, they model niche construction, and they say, for example, these two say that they are modeling ecological and evolutionary consequence of niche construction, but you have plants and the soil. Plants are treated as a big compartment of the ecosystem, and evolution is something that happens, like Deus ex machina. So at a certain point you have different plants, and then you have different plants with a small mutation. Okay, so this is a little bit of artificial integration. But yeah, the ecologists in the last year, there are hundreds of papers about eco-evolutionary dynamics and integrating phylogenies and ecologies, the modern synthesis of evolutionary ecology, etc., a lot of stuff. The newest synthesis, they are, as I said, they are very optimistic in how evolution has integrated ecology, and now it's time for ecology to integrate evolution, but I think that the situation is not quite like that. Although I have to say that evolution has some very important progress, which is, for example, starting to deal with phenotypes, because you need to deal with phenotypes if you want to take into account ecology. And now we have Evo, and we have quantitative genetics and a lot of stuff that can treat somehow the phenotypes and try to integrate a little bit more. The ecologists have already some models. I don't have time, I guess, so I just go to the conclusion to say that, well, in 1965, Hutchinson famously coined the metaphor about the stage, the ecological stage, and the evolutionary play. So you have evolutionary agents that play, and the ecology is just a stage on where the evolution happens. So like a background. And now the ecologists say that they are building a much more complex picture where actors can change a stage, and the audience can influence the actors, and the actors can influence each other, and the changed stage can change the roles of the actors, and so on and so forth. And I like very much the Eldredge's book, 1999. Where he says that patterns in the natural world are extremely important, and Magnusson was talking about patterns. They pose both the questions and the answers that scientists formulate as they seek to describe the world. Science is a search for resonance between mind and natural pattern as we try to answer these questions. So in this two-way street, together forms the resonance between mind and material nature. So it's very important what pattern we are looking for, what patterns we are looking for. The search for more accurate depictions and explanations of phenomena already perceived is where the most serious day-to-day work of science lies. So we are wrestling with patterns in nature, the explanation of agreed upon patterns, and the search for new ways of seeing new patterns. So my wish is that really we are finding new patterns and new way of integrating these two kinds of patterns. So I think I'm done. Thank you.